It is Luis Brosse from Wizway Mobile Ticketing, and we're going to talk a little bit about some successes and a case study of how NFC is being used in France.
Thank you, Mike. And I just wanted to say how much it was an honor for me to speak with GR East and the Suica teams, which has made a great job and which are an example for us. Just a couple of words about Wizway. My name is Luis Brosse, and I'm the CEO of Wizway, which is a specific company. We are an enabler to prevent something. Next slide, please. Which is the current customer experience. And currently, it's important to solve problems. And the problem in many transit networks is the problems of queues and the problems of getting a ticket to use the public transit. And we are a company that is backed by 4 major companies. 2 of them are transit operators in France, which are SNCF, French Rail, which operates regional and high-speed trains long distance throughout France, and RATP, which runs many transit networks worldwide, among which the Paris Transit Network. And also 2 technical specialists, which are Orange, the mobile network operator, and Thales, the security specialist, because we think the main way to solve the problems of queues and to improve customer experience, next slide please, is by bringing the mobile technology and making life of passengers much easier than it is today. And definitely when talking about mass, but also when talking about customer experience, the mobile comes immediately at mind. NFC technology has been prevalent and is growing amongst transit networks for the last 20 years. But the question is how can we introduce the mobile into that? Next slide, please. And there are 2 ways of doing that. One thing we should not forget is that mobile technique does not obviate the need for physical media. We do not believe at Wizway we are specialists in mobile ticketing, but we do think that many customers will still keep some form of physical media, devices, tickets of any form. So we do not think that the mobile is going to replace them. And there are 2 ways to choose a mobile technology. Next slide, please. One is by using the existing infrastructure and by making the mobile phones be compatible with the existing infrastructure, which brings a lot of benefits. No additional investment, the reuse of all what exists for the existing NFC tickets and NFC cards with the same customer experience, but transferred onto the mobile phone. And this is definitely the choice that we have made at Wizway. Next slide, please. But there's also a second possibility, which is to add a new mobile technology. As what characterizes the mobile phone is its versatility. You do have a GPS, so you can have a be in, be out technology to locate where you enter the transit network and when you get out of the transit network. You do have a screen, so you may have solutions as easy having a green screen when you do have a valid ticket. Of course, there's the QR code, and there's the Bluetooth technology, which is also available on the smartphone. And definitely for transit authorities and operators, there's a choice to be made whether reusing the same technology but transferring it onto the smartphone, or adding a new technology which brings sort of dual system, because you will keep the existing physical media. And then you will have some form of parallel ticketing solutions with different ticketing systems, and with, of course, additional costs and problems to be solved. Next slide, please. One thing also that is interesting about NFC and contactless, very much the term contactless payment and contactless is being prevalent in the use of contactless payment, which of course we see the example of London TfL, but many new examples now in Sydney, in Singapore, in New York, with Omni, and many places, with contactless payment growing in customer usage. And some people have thought that it was opposed to transit card emulation as it does exist in other places, especially in Asia and now in Europe. But in fact, we do think that these two solutions, which both are based on the NFC technology, are very compatible with each other. Contactless payment is a great service for occasional customers using either physical cards or payment wallets such as Apple Pay or Google Pay. It's very easy for anonymous customers. But on the other side, when you provide a transit card emulation into existing transit apps, which can be mass apps, then it brings a lot of additional services for the regular travelers. Of course, it is fully mobile and integrated in the mobile, and it adds a lot of benefits, such as the customer relationship management, where the transit authority knows who are the customers, what their customer usage are. And in fact, these two are very compatible and very complementing each other. Next slide, please. And it brings value, of course, for the transit agencies. I mentioned that in terms of customer knowledge, and it is obviously, as a mobile app is a key component of MaaS, but also for the travelers, because the integration into an app that does have to include public transit, which is of course pivotal in customer experience using mobility service around mega cities. It brings a lot of services in terms of door-to-door, multimodal, real-time information, ticketing, whatever the form of the ticketing. It can be prepaid ticketing, it can be postpaid ticketing, and in terms of customer care. And definitely, we do believe that one of the assets of MaaS is the app integration and the integration of several mobility solutions, some of which might not use NFC contactless, and might use other technologies such as QR code, but definitely you have to include NFC into a MaaS solution on mobile. And next slide, please. So we developed a set of SDKs. So there is no mobile app of Wizway. Next slide, please. One of them is called WaitApp. It is a transit card emulation using several technologies, such as secure element, either with the SIM or the embedded secure element of the handset manufacturers, and also using the HCE technology on Android and on Harmony OS. And next slide, please. And we added to that a wait card, which to state frankly, we did not believe into at the very beginning, which is the ability to read and to reload physical transit cards through the smartphone. And we see that there's a lot of customer usage on that. So we really act as a technical enabler through open SDKs and APIs, which are easy to integrate into the existing mobile apps in order to remove the complexity from the customers and from the developers of the mobile app. So we deal with all the discrepancies that do exist between mobile phones. We have seen more than 700 different mobile phones through our platforms, and I can assure you that a Huawei that is sold in the US is definitely very different from the same smartphone brand in China and in Europe. So there are many differences, and we have to guarantee that from the customer perspective, the validation, the purchase of ticket is really a seamless experience. Next slide, please. And we also have added some additional services such as card lifecycle management to facilitate the customer service. The main question of customers is to know what happens if I lose my mobile phone. So we try to provide as many services to the PTOs and PTAs to solve these issues. Next slide, please. And we are already integrated into the key mobility apps in France. Obviously, those of our shareholders like RATP and SNCF, but we also are integrated in also main cities such as Strasbourg and Lille, which are cities which have roughly 500,000 people living in these cities, which use their own mobile apps, and we can see that this brings a lot of services to the customer. Next slide, please. with a traditional few clicks customer experience from the itinerary to the purchase. We very much believe that customers do not want to purchase tickets. That's something that is made compulsory. But what they want is how to know how to get from point A to point B, to be informed about the possible disruptions or possible delays, and of course get a proper proof of travel to go from where they are to where they want to go. Next slide, please. I just wanted to share a few data from what happened recently. Of course, especially impacted by the pandemic. In France, we have experienced 3 lockdowns yet. I hope there's not going to be a number 4, but who knows? And through these lockdowns, which obviously have had an impact on our activity, we have seen a huge growth in terms of customer usage since the last 2 years, with about 50% average quarterly growth. Next slide, please. And this, in fact, hides 2 separate impacts. The last, I would say normal, I don't know what normal is now, but the average months of activity was February 2020 in France, with lockdown starting on March the 16th. And from that point, which is 100%, which is our basis, we see 2 different impacts. One is that we have not yet found normal usage of public transit. In the recent weeks, it has been up to 80%. That still means that 20% of the former users of public transit do not use public transit anymore, either because there is some form of home office, or because they are reluctant to use mass transit, which is seen as a non-sanitized way of moving around, so with a larger extent of the cost. So definitely, there's a big challenge in the months and the years to come, which is to have customers go back to use collective mass transit. And definitely this goes very much through the customer service. And the other interesting figure we have found is the customer usage of mobile NFC, which is about 160% of what it was previously. So in terms of customer adoption, the COVID has really accelerated, has trebled the customer usage of mobile contactless. Next slide, please. And this definitely proves the interest of this. An interesting thing also is to see how people are behaving. Previous to the pandemic, we had a sort of 50-50 customer usage of season tickets and of occasional tickets. And since the pandemic, we have seen a growing usage of tickets versus the seasonal fares. This also is very much impacted with the change in customer behavior. When you travel 2 times a week to your job instead of 5 times a week, then obviously the question of what is the best fare, what is the best way to optimize the cost of my public transportation is something that comes prevalent. And very much this opens the question of account-based ticketing, of pay-as-you-go, of fare capping, which is also a possibility and very much important in terms of mass. In terms of mass, the best way to pay is to be sure that you pay the best fare, whatever your customer usage is. And the customer usage of any form of transportation is something that is going to be very less regular in the next month than it was previously. Next slide, please. So some key takeaways. Definitely, closed loop brings very strong benefits, especially when it's based on open standards. I think that Philippe Vapro from Calypso is going to speak in a few minutes, and the use of open standards is something that is very beneficial to the transit authorities. Next slide, please. It brings a service that is now widely available on smartphones. We have roughly 2 billion smartphones which are NFC compatible worldwide, which is really a very strong asset for NFC. Next slide, please. And it is now easy to integrate into the existing apps or the mobile wallets, which also bring a lot of customer benefits. Next slide, please. And maybe the more important of all, it is very popular with travelers. And the pandemic has shown that the perceived hygiene of contactless is very strong in the development of customer usage. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Luis.